Hello, everybody, and welcome to Rough Draft, your draft podcast brought to you by thedraftteam.com and UFTA Sports. I'm Kirby O'Connor, one of your
And I'm
hosts.
Josh Fry.
Hey, Josh Fry. I said your name wrong last time, but you were very nice and texted it to me. You were like, hey, I didn't want to call you out in public, but you messed it
Yeah,
up.
you know.
We have quite a bit of draft news to talk about. I'm in the final stages of writing a mock draft that I now am going to have to adjust because of the recent. Was it Schefter that tweeted that Jones is. Or said
Jones
something
is
about.
headed to
Yeah.
San Francisco.
Jones
Yeah.
is headed to San Francisco. Okay. I had them taking Fields because Jones is a bad quarterback. But he's not necessarily a bad quarterback. I just don't think he fits super well anywhere as a starter. But apparently they're going that way. So
Yeah, we'll see how it works out.
I don't. I think the argument of him having a good team doesn't hold.
You dropped again.
Oh my god, this stupid thing. Hold on.
I don't understand.
I don't understand either. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening in my life.
All right, and now you're back apparently. What the heck?
Okay, I don't know what's happening.
I don't either.
But yeah, I don't think he fits anywhere as a starter. So I think it's odd that they would target him that high.
Yeah, I mean, I like we talked about. I don't think he's even like worth a first round pick. Like it's definitely a reach for a number 3 pick at this point.
Yeah, it's very odd how much they seem to want him. Like I get wanting your guy, but like moving up to 3 to do it, it's
Yeah, and you gave up so much, like those 2 future firsts, and then there was another third, right?
yeah.
Yeah, so like that's a ton to give up for a guy that might not even be a starter in like 5 years.
It's a very very big gamble, to say the least. Um, but some other news. You wrote a short piece again off of a Shifter um, news thing that Detroit and Atlanta could be moving back in the first round, and I actually think both of those would not be bad moves for those teams. Less, I think it's how do I want to put this? I think it's a less effective move for Atlanta to move back than for Detroit to move back, just because of need and the slot that they're at. Because Atlanta, especially if Jones goes at 3, and well, even if Fields goes at 3, Lance or Wilson, one of those top 4 quarterbacks is going to be sitting on the board there. And Matt Ryan has not looked nearly as good the last couple of seasons, and he's about to turn 36. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, why would you? I mean, I get that maybe you still have faith in Ryan, but why would you, if you're able to get your quarterback of the future, not stay there?
Yeah, I mean, I think they do have a lot of faith left in Ryan. He obviously hasn't been great for them, but I think a lot of that also has to do with they don't have the best offensive line. They haven't had a really healthy receiving core the past few years, and their defense has been atrocious. So I think if they can trade down, pick up a few of those other needs, maybe Ryan will have a bounce back year. But that's the only thing that can justify moving down from 4 at this point, especially if there's still going to be a quarterback on the board.
I think the point of their defense and offensive line needing a lot of work is a good one because there's going to be defenders and there's going to be offensive linemen who fall, especially if we go quarterback at even 1, 2, 3. That's gonna be it's gonna be something.
Yeah, I mean, the draft essentially starts at 4 at this point because you'd assume Jacksonville goes Lawrence, and then New York goes Wilson, and then San Fran goes Jones, and then it's off to the races.
Yeah, even if, like I said, even if the Jets moving Sam Darnold, like essentially locks them into drafting a quarterback at 2. So, and San Fran moving up and apparently wanting Mac Jones at 3, that does, like, it's crazy. We're gonna sit there and just be like, we've got like a half hour to kill because 1, 2, 3 are just, we know what they are already, pretty
Right,
much.
yeah.
So that'll be super interesting, especially if Atlanta moves back. I want to get your thoughts on pick number 5 because I think it's interesting. See,
Yeah, so, I mean, if the top 3 are definitely going to be QBs, I think depending on who trades up to 4, you got to go Sewell at 5. I mean, we talked about this too, but Joe Burrow needs protection, and they weren't able to give it to him last year, and it led to a pretty terrible injury, and they're lucky it wasn't worse. So if the sooner you get the protection for him, the better.
yeah, and I've seen a lot of arguments about them going for either a weapon or a defensive help. But I think what you have to understand is that the quarterback is valued so highly in the NFL, not only on the field, but as like a marketing tool, that the team is going to be interested in keeping him upright and keeping him safe more than, taking a chance on a weapon that could potentially not work out as well. Like, even if you go for an offensive lineman, at least you can justify it as like, well, we're trying to protect our biggest asset.
Right, yeah. And I mean, if you get him a weapon, like, that's great and all, but if he doesn't have time to throw, he's not going to be able to use it.
Yeah, we Vikings fans understand that one very well.
Yeah.
Another one that could be interesting: Miami at 6. Miami doesn't need an offensive lineman. They don't have like severe needs on their defense really. So I think they go with either a wide receiver or Kyle Pitts at 6. I have to imagine. And
Yeah,
for
that one definitely makes more sense to go with a weapon because, like you said, they're pretty much set everywhere else. This is the perfect time to get to another person to throw to.
Yeah, and for my money, I'd rather go Kyle Pitts just because of the versatility and the roles that tight ends play in today's game. But, I mean, you got your pick of, at that point, Chase, Waddle, Smith, literally anybody on the board.
Yeah, you can't really miss.
Yeah. So going on to 7, just natural progression, the Lions. So this is very, very interesting because if San Fran takes Mac Jones at 3, that would mean that Justin Fields is free to go at 7 unless Atlanta takes him at 4, which, as we've discussed, probably not going to happen.
Probably not, yeah.
Or potentially Trey Lance at 7 even. But if Detroit doesn't like either of those guys, they can move back because that's kind of an awkward spot for them too if they don't have an immediate need right there, or they don't want to take one of the quarterbacks.
Yeah, I kind of assumed it was going to be offensive line or wide receiver there. But if they're looking to trade down, I mean, I think it honestly makes sense to trade down because you'll still get some pretty good guys at mid to late first round with that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be such a loaded draft class already. And then the fact that like the quarterback position is going to be getting so much attention, like we're going to see Pro Bowlers and All Pros in the end of the first round, like no matter what, because that's just going to be the nature of. I think half of the quarterbacks are going to bust, or at least be decent middle of the road starters.
Yeah, not as good as where everybody's thinking, at least.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of the nature of the turnover of the NFL and seeing a lot of teams that are in need of a quarterback, and they want to try to get one that's going to be not just a fill in the hole. Like obviously you want a quarterback who's a game changer. So they're willing to take these chances, but not everybody can be Patrick Mahomes. Most people are going to be Mitchell Trubisky.
Yeah.
So, let me see. What else did we have to talk about? Do you think the Vikings change anything? This is one of our things that was talked about with Jeff Gladney's arrest. Do you think the Vikings change anything at 14?
I don't think it would make much sense to. I mean, they added a lot of depth to the cornerback position already through free agency. And I mean, it's a shame that this happened, but I don't think this changes too much for at least the Vikings playing on the field. You've got Dantzler, you've got Alexander, you've got Patrick Peterson. That's three really good guys right there. I don't think you really need to add another starting caliber cornerback to that.
Yeah, I don't think it changes anything at 14. I do think it changes the Vikings' approach to the mid-round. So instead of targeting either falling wide receivers or falling offensive linemen, they might be Mike Zimmer might bang on the table a little bit to get a cornerback that he's more interested in.
Maybe.
Then again, they might just end up with the entire 7th round instead. With all of this like crazy sliding and everything, who do you think is going to be the steal of the first round?
I think it's honestly gonna be Jalen Waddle. I think he's gonna slide a lot. He's not a guy that people I think are really looking at as an immediate contributor, at least like as an outside number one receiver, like a lot of these other guys, Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith. But I think he's just as much of an impactful player from the slot as any of these other guys can be from the outside. His breakaway speed is ridiculous. His elusivity, he can't be tackled, and he makes winning plays for a football team, and that's somebody that you want on your team.
Yeah, I think that I agree with you. I have him in my mock going to the Cardinals at 16. I think that would be a crazy receiving core.
That would be a steal, yeah.
Yeah, with Hopkins and Waddle on the other side. I don't know what you would do on defense to stop that, but looks like we have a YouTube comment. Don't know why you would gamble with 36-year-old quarterback when you have picked number 4. Somebody would have to give me a lot of draft capital for me not to take one of them top quarterbacks. You are correct, sir. But I think, like we said, I think the Atlanta Falcons have a lot more trust and a lot more. They have a lot more faith in Matt Ryan than I think we do. But yeah, I would agree that unless you're getting a first rounder this year, and now I would say at least 2 first rounders, or a first round and like a high second, somehow like working that out, especially with the Miami and the San Francisco trades that have happened. Yeah, like that 4th pick is going to be super valuable to move. So I can see, especially if you can get, if one of the quarterbacks is going to slide and you move back to like 10 and you're still able to grab one, that would be potentially a really good thing to do. Or if they feel that they can get somebody like a Kyle Trask and develop him behind Ryan for a year or 2, which is actually what I think somebody should do, is get Kyle Trask. And I know I've heard that the Saints have interest in him. I have to imagine that the Washington football team has interest in him. But yeah, I think Trask is going to be not the steal of the draft, because I do think that's Waddle, like you say, but I think he's going to be a bigger surprise than anybody expects.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, trading down doesn't necessarily mean they're out of the market for a QB. They have a ton of faith in Ryan, like they've shown that already. And I mean, it's not even set in stone that this thing's going to get traded either. Like, just because they're shopping calls doesn't mean that anybody's going to offer a package that's good enough for them. And they still could just end up taking a quarterback at 4 if they don't see that the draft capital they're going to get back is anything worth it.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's going to be. It's interesting because we've already seen so much movement in this first round, but I think there's going to be a lot more movement come draft day, especially in that mid-round 13 to like 20 range. I think there's going to be a lot more moving than people expect because there's just it's interesting. There's not really a great fit like in those anywhere almost. Like there's a lot of like okay ones. Jalen Waddle is a really good one, but like the Patriots at 15, I think the Patriots need a quarterback. They could go with a linebacker or a defender of some sort, but they need a quarterback, as we saw last year. The Chargers is another weird one that I'm not sure exactly which direction they're going to go. I mean, even Minnesota at 14, if there's an offensive lineman that they feel that they can wait on a few picks, you might see Spielman move back for a second or a third because they don't have many picks in those like second and third rounds. And we all know that Spielman loves to be in those rounds. He's taken some of his better picks in those ones. So I think we're going to see a lot of movement. I think it's going to be an exciting draft come draft night.
Yeah, a lot of things can happen. It's going to be super unpredictable. We don't know what's going to happen outside of these top 3, and it's going to be really fun to watch.
Yeah, I think it's going to be so weird. It's going to be weird, and it's going to be exciting, and the Raiders are going to do something that nobody expects, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
So, and that's just the first round. That's like not even getting into how absolutely insane like the second and third rounds are, because nobody has any idea what's going to happen there. You know, especially if some of these guys get passed on and fall to the early second, we could see some very hungry teams moving up into that early second round to snag guys like Rashad Bateman could fall that far. Asante Samuel Jr. could fall to that early second round. Anybody who's looking for a very good coverage corner should be looking at him. I think there's a lot of edge rushers that are going to go in the early second round, if not the late first. So it'll just be interesting to see what runs happen as we go. So on to what we've actually talked about on the draftteam.com. Looks like I'm working on my mock draft right now. I posted about Rashad Bateman being kind of in limbo. You posted a New Orleans Saints 3-round mock draft. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So I went into that basically trying to rebuild the Saints defense because they lost so many guys to free agency between Trey Hendrickson, Malcolm Brown, Janoris Jenkins. And those are all like key starters to that team that made the playoffs last year. So let me pull it up real quick for you. And it was really interesting. I did it on the Draft Network through their mock draft system. So it was weird because 5 QBs went in the top 10, which is something that could happen. But it led to Trayvon Morig, I believe how you say it. He fell all the way to 28, and I had to snag him there because the Saints, they franchise tag Marcus Williams, and they still have Malcolm Jenkins, but he's 33 years old. So they don't really have much long-term depth at the safety position, in my opinion. And I think this is going to be a year where the Saints aren't really looking for production immediately. They're going to be looking for something that can help them 3-4 years down the road. And I think Trayvon Morig is definitely somebody that can do that for them. And then round 2, I ended up going edge rusher there. I picked up Joseph Asai out of Texas. I think he can fit in really well there. They've still got Cam Jordan. They've got David Onyemata. And those two guys are going to still attract a lot of attention from opposing offenses. And I think Asai can, I hate to say like he'll replace Trey Hendrickson because Trey Hendrickson was really good, but I think he can fill in a lot of that production that they're losing from Hendrickson. And then moving into the third round, I said the Saints lost Janoris Jenkins. He was a key part of that defense. And they picked up Benjamin St-Juste out of Minnesota. And I think he can definitely produce at least the same sort of thing that Janoris Jenkins did out of that position. They still have decent depth in Patrick Robinson, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and Keith Washington Jr., but they definitely need another high upside player to go out opposite of Marshawn Lattimore. He's a really big CB, and his pro day was just ridiculously good with that 3.96 shuttle and the 4.5 40. So I think he can fit in pretty well in New Orleans. All these guys have really aggressive play style too, which I think Sean Payton really likes. It's something that he really looks for in the draft, especially in these middle rounds, which really leads to my final pick for New Orleans. At 105, they pick up Kadarius Atwell out of Louisville. This is another need that New Orleans has. They have Michael Thomas, obviously, who's going to get the majority of their targets. And Marcus Callaway and Traquan Smith stepped up a lot last year. But they don't have Emmanuel Sanders. They don't have Jared Cook anymore. And they need another solid third option on that offense, especially if Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill is going to be the one throwing the ball. You need reliable receivers, and I think Atwell can do that. He's a super fast runner. He can break away really easily off the line of scrimmage, and he fits into the slot perfectly on this team. So I think that's a pretty good pickup for them late in the third round with that comp pick that they got. And I honestly thought that went about as well as it possibly could have in terms of a mock draft. So it was a good time. I'm glad I got to do it for the New Orleans Saints because if you don't know, that's my team that I root for. So it was a good one.
Why are we even friends?
It's a really good question.
I was giving you, I gave you a hard time on Twitter last night because you're a Brewers fan as well.
Yeah.
So why are we?
It's an interesting dynamic we got here.
It's a business relationship. No.
Right.
But yeah, I think you're absolutely right that I think the Saints understand that it's going to be tough for them to compete at the level that they have historically without Drew Brees and kind of having to find. I think they're going to do some soul searching on offense as well this year. Not that they don't have the talent and the players to do it. I think it's just going to be a matter of finding who's going to lead that team and who's going to be kind of the next man up in that regard. So focusing on defense and giving themselves a chance with an offense that maybe will take a little bit of time to gel and find their rhythm is certainly a good strategy. One that the Vikings have almost exclusively used the last decade. But I think the Saints also, as much as their offense is explosive and is extremely creative and effective, their hallmark since they won the Super Bowl and even slightly before then has been great defense. And you go into New Orleans and you were concerned about Drew Brees, but I think the underrated part of it is like they've always had a defense that at the very least, when push came to shove, could come up with big stops.
Right.
So,
yeah. I mean, the defense, we saw what happened when they didn't have a great defense. It was Drew Brees throwing every single snap, then they go 7-9. Like, it didn't work out very well. New Orleans needs a defense, and I think that's the way they go.
You also did a Jaguars mock draft. I'm going to skip that one because I think it's
pretty straightforward.
Yeah. We could talk about it, but it's a lot of things that make a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got some more profiles up there. Tylan Wallace, that was written by Jared. And then Terrace Marshall Jr. It was written by you as well. You want to talk about that? I think he's the LSU receiver that nobody is talking about.
Yeah, he's the guy that kind of got left out of the headlines of that historic offense in 19. Yeah, I think talk about steals of the draft. This could be another guy that he goes in the early second round and buds into one of the top 3 receivers. He showed this year that even without Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and Joe Burrow, that he can still lead an offense. He had career highs in receiving yards and receptions this year in only 7 games, and he's really reliable as a pass catcher. Like, he doesn't drop balls too often. He has decent breakaway speed, and he can make plays for your team. His awareness is, I think, what really gets overlooked, especially making passes along the sidelines, and his red zone presence is ridiculous too. So another one that I think could end up being a steal in this draft.
Yeah, I think it's crazy. He put up 23 touchdowns in 19 games between last year and between 2019 and 2020. And like you say, we're not even really talking about him as being in that first round for sure. So to get that kind of like production from the early to mid second round, it would be just.
It'd be good. It'd be really good. Like you said, teams are going to be trading up to get into that early second round. I think that's a guy you trade up for.
Yes, indeed. All right. Just making sure there's no. Just making sure there is no news on Twitter right now. Nothing we're gonna miss, other than I'm not seeing anything just yet.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything either.
But I will have my mock draft redone and reworked now that I have to change. Oh gosh.
A lot.
I mean, I'm probably just gonna flip 3 and 7. I think if the Lions have a quarterback on the board like Fields at 7 and they don't take it, I'm gonna be surprised to say the least.
If it's Fields, you have to take him at 7. Like, that's a steal.
Yeah, I think Fields is has the potential to be the second best quarterback in this draft, and I'll fight anybody over Zach Wilson. So
yeah.
But that's all we have today. We'll be back at least next week. We might go on Friday. I'm not sure yet. We got some things to work out. So, but yeah, this has been the Rough Draft, episode 2. We'll be back next week, and before the rest of the draft, we'll do our absolute best to not play MLB The Show for 24 hours every day when it comes out.
Hopefully Joe isn't watching this.
Joe, if you're watching this, we'll just put it on Twitch, and then it'll technically count as content for the business.
Right.
So.
There we go.
All right. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. See you guys later.
Bye.